for some reason our live feed doesn't always go live. But yes, today our lesson is living in our purpose. And I've been picking the lessons out of the book, The Eye of the Storm, by the Unity minister, Gary Simmons. Now this book can be a tough book. It's actually a really easy read. It's an easy read, but it's all about taking responsibility. Because in the Unity philosophy, we don't abdicate our authority and put our woes out on something way out there and expect it to fix all of our problems. Right? We know that we're working with an indwelling spirit because God is everywhere present, and that means each of us. And so this book, a lot of people just have a hard time with the book, but that's okay. But see, to be expansive in our lives, we have to take responsibility. Because only when we are expansive and we are united with that force within us, the indwelling spirit, that's when we learn what to do next. What's the next right thing to do? That's how we let go of the stuff that's already happened. And we know we can't do anything about it. It's already, what's done is done. And so going forward, we have the power, we have the authority to make a choice right here and now in our lives. We get to choose what we do next, no matter what has been going on. Now this all gets a lot easier for us when we are living in our purpose. Right? Living in our purpose, it makes it flow a little smoother for us. Gary Simmons defines our purpose this way. Purpose is the universe's intention to be, through you, the presence of God. Now this is why, here at Unity, we say things like, oh, God is all things, and that means me. I'm the physical emanation of God walking around on this planet. And that's why we say that stuff. I'm the activity of God in this world. I'm the hands. I am the heart of God in this world and in my life. And so our purpose is letting this force work through us. And it's the same purpose our entire lives, our entire life on this planet. This purpose never changes. Other things may change in our life. Like we may say we have a life purpose. Or like I remember when I thought my purpose was to be in a rock band. And then I thought my purpose was only to be mom. But those things change. Your kids grow up. Right? You change your mind about things. So our all-encompassing purpose never changes. And that is to be the way that God comes out into the world. We are the means for God to work in our lives and in this world. Now, when we are in our purpose, it guides everything that we do. When we are in our purpose, our life becomes expansive. If we are not in our purpose, our life becomes restrictive. So our entire purpose is really not about what we do. It's about how we do all that we do. Are we living in our purpose? Are we in our Christ consciousness? Are we in our centered self? Because if we're not, we're in conflict. Right? We're either in our centered self or we're not. We're in our centered self or we're in conflict. Now, ideally, every time we would experience conflict, what would be really nice is to ask ourselves this question. Am I living in my purpose right now? Like, can we do that? Like, I usually can't. When I'm in conflict, and that was can't. I said can't. I usually can't. When I first go into conflict, I want to be mad. Like, I want to point my finger at somebody. That guy cut me off, and now my whole entire day is ruined because of that driver who's being so bad. But ideally, really, if we are feeling the conflict, we know we're in conflict because we don't like how it feels. But if we could ask that question, am I living in my purpose? Am I letting the presence of God work through me and for me and out into my life? Am I allowing that? Or am I in my own way? Am I in my way? There is a story in the New Testament about teacher Yeshua, the Christ. He asks his disciples this question. Who do you all say I am? When I'm not around, who do you say I am? And Simon Peter says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. The living God. God is a living force, not a sky daddy out there who's going to swoop in and solve our problems. Unless you were raised without a dad, then you think Sky Daddy ignores you, because we anthropomorphize God when we don't get it, right? So God is not a Sky Daddy. God is actually a living force that we must participate with it. We must interact with it, right? We participate with this force that is the creative, expansive energy of life that's moving through each and every one of us, that it inspires us to expand our territory. It inspires us to do the next right thing. It inspires us to move into doing that thing that excites us but scares us a little. But we're really excited about it, but we're also really scared of it. It's that force that is urging us forward in that. Now this force, it is a participatory force, it is an active force, it's in motion, and it only expands, which means we can't phone it in our life. We can't just do the bare minimum and expect to have this force working through us for us as us. Right? If we're doing the bare minimum, we are in the way of this force. It's not about restriction. If we're doing the bare minimum, we're in restriction. We're in the way of ourselves. Okay, so this force is expansive. Now Christ benefited from this energy because he participated with it. You know, one day, I think it was his mom asked him, well, where were you at? What were you doing? He says, I was out doing the work of my Father. He was participating with the indwelling Spirit and listening. What it said to do next, the next right thing, he did it. He always did the next right thing. He was out doing the miracles. He was out blowing people's minds, so people were always talking about him, like one way or the other. People loved him or they hated him or they were scared to death of him. But he was out there changing how people thought. So Christ was participating with this energy. He treated it as a living force, he aligned with it, and he pushed the go button, and he was moving forward with this. Now, he was in his purpose, and guess what? Christ had the very same exact purpose that all of us have, to be the way that the living God comes out into this world, to be the way of that force. Christ had the exact same purpose. Now, of course, how we're living it might look a lot different than how he lived it. But we are in our purpose when this force is expanding through us. When this force is moving through us, when the way of God is using us and moving out into our life, we are in our purpose. Now, if we are feeling conflict anywhere in our lives, anywhere, we are in the way of the living God. We are in the way of this force. So if we're in the way of this force, what that might look like is maybe we start off just being a little judgmental, and then we're complaining, and then we're blaming, and we're angry, and we're stubborn, and we're unforgiving, and we're unwilling. This is being in conflict. Right? We know this doesn't feel good, so this is being in conflict. Now, if we're in conflict anywhere in our life, really the conflict is starting right here. Something out here is just triggering us so that we're in conflict. But if we're in conflict anywhere, then our whole entire life becomes a big fat disappointment. Everything. Because everything has the potential to go wrong. So if we're the way of the living God, we're in our centered self. We're in our peaceful center. Even if things out here are crazy, even if there's no peace in the world or in our lives, if we are in our centered self, we still have access to being solution-oriented. When we are in our centered self, we know what it feels like to be in non-resistance. And non-resistance does not mean we look at something bad that's going on in the world and we decide, or in our lives, we don't look at that and decide, okay, well, I guess I just have to tolerate that because I want to be a good spiritual person and not resist that. But actually, being in non-resistance means we observe what's going on. And because we're in our centered self, then we're guided to do the next thing. We've observed it. Now we get instruction on, do we change that thing or do we rise above it? People who come to Unity Church by far are considered mystical alchemists, right? Unity organization did like a huge marketing research thing, and the average Unity person would be stereotyped as the archetype of a mystical alchemist. An alchemist just changes things in their life, right? They change the lead to gold. So when we are in our centered self, we can look and see the lead in our life, right? The things that aren't working, right? The things that we either transmute, transform, or we transcend. But we have to be in our centered self to do that, to know the next right thing to do. Lao Tzu said, men are born soft and supple, dead they are stiff and hard. Plants are born tender and pliant, dead they are brittle and dry. Thus whoever is brittle and dry, thus whoever is stiff and inflexible is a disciple of death. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life. We are here to be the life of God in this world. And the life of God moving through us and out into our life is expansive. It has to be, because that's the nature of God, is to be expansive. Like the light that shines from the sun, it keeps going, right? It keeps going, because eventually it expands so much you can't really see it so well, but it's expansive and it's there and it just goes on forever. So I've been talking a lot about relationships in these last few weeks because we are in a relationship with everything, because God is all things and we are part of that all things, which means we're in relationship with all things because somehow we're connected to everything. However, in the package of our life, we have a very intimate relationship with things. Like relationships that show us if we're the way of God or we're in the way of God. So this is how the package of our life looks. First of all, we have our belief system, right? What do we believe? Do we believe in a friendly universe or not? Are we in faith? It's here we decide whether we're the way of God or we're in the way, right? So we've got our belief system, but then it goes to our body. Oh, we can have conflict with our body. And then the package of our life extends out to the people we know. And then the people we don't really know, but we interact with, and then maybe that person who we'll only see one time in our entire life. And then it goes out, the package of our life goes out to all of the stuff we do. Jobs, careers, hobbies, that kind of thing. So say that we wake up in the morning and it starts with conflict, right? Right here, like right away, we're in conflict. Right here, because this is where it starts. We're in conflict, and then we think, why do bad things always happen to me? Why don't things work out? Why is all this crap piling up? Why is the universe out to get me? Why doesn't anything ever work out? So then we don't have faith. We don't have faith in ourselves. We don't have faith in a friendly universe. We don't have faith in God. We cannot have faith in God if we don't have faith in ourselves. Because we'll hear that instruction, the next right thing we could be doing, but because we don't have faith in ourselves, we're like, wishful thinking, that was stupid. Like, who thinks I could do that? That's crazy. That'd be a lot of work. Okay, so we don't have faith then. So if we've got conflict here, then that goes out into our body. We have conflict in our own body. When I was younger, when I was in my 20s, so I'm a tall gal, right? I'm 5'9". And in my 20s, I maybe needed to lose 10 pounds. But it seemed like 100. That's how it felt. And I would tell my body. Because you know what doesn't help is having a really skinny, twiggy friend who's like, when she wears her t-shirts, like the extra small is hanging on her, yet you can still manage to see her rib cage, right? So I had that skinny, twiggy friend. And I was mad at my body because I blamed my body. I wanted to be skinny and twiggy too. I'm going to punish you, body. We're going to starve. I'm going to starve you for 3 days. I'm going to show you. Because if you're not going to let me eat pizza and look like Twiggy over here, then there's something wrong with you. So I'm going to punish you, right? And that was how I viewed my body. But then growing older, right? I was like, why can't you keep up with me? What's the use of having all these ideas if I can't keep up with it, right? In my physical body. Why do you need so much sleep? So if we're in conflict with our own body, what that can look like is doing the bare minimum, if we even do that for our bodies. These bodies that give to us all the time. We do the bare minimum, like it's okay. It's like, well, we can only get 4 hours of sleep tonight. That's all right. I'll give you 12 cups of coffee in the morning. We'll get through it. That's conflict. That's conflict in our body. Now, if we have conflict out in our body, it moves out into the people that we know, the people that we're interacting with. And it may not look like an obvious conflict, right? Like where somebody's angry and stuff, and it's real obvious, like that there's these two people that don't like each other. But what it can look like is, the guy over there, I'm so judgmental against him because he did all this weird stuff. And he didn't like my music, right? So then I'm gonna blame. We blame, we complain. That's being in conflict. It doesn't matter if they know about it or not. Conflict's here, it's all about us. And then that goes out into everything that we do. We are in conflict in our own lives. If we're at a job where we're working really hard, but then we're mad because nobody notices how hard we're working. Nobody appreciates all the hard work that we do. In fact, I'll show this company. I'm going to take a package of Post-it notes and take it home. Totally waste them all. Right? Or, I'm just going to phone it in. I'm just going to not do my best. I'm just going to do what's necessary, what's required. And then it goes out into our life. How are we in our relationships? Are we on the phone when we should be with the person who we're in the room with? Are we on a computer game instead of creating something that we're really excited about creating, but we just keep putting it on a back burner? Conflict. That's actually all conflict. But so much of it is habitual, we don't give it a second thought. But it's not adding to our well-being. That's how we know it's conflict. It's not adding to our well-being. It's not adding to our creativity. We are in the way of God, which means it's restricted energy, which means we're actually sinking into lack consciousness more and more. Okay, so that's a lot. We start with conflict here, and it goes into our way of thinking. We focus on our body first, because our body's the first thing we see in the morning when we get up, right? Our body's the first thing we're complaining about in our head as we go into the bathroom, and we're like, well, you may not be doing that, but I was doing that this morning, but I had been working on this, and I was like, I love you, bees, we'll do this, we'll be okay. Okay. I've been on sugar now for just over 3 weeks. Conflict. Feels like conflict. Okay, let's start this over. We wake up in the morning and we decide right here, I will be the way of God today. I will be the way, the living God, which is creative expression, right? It's creativity, it's love, it's compassion, it's all the good stuff we need. I will be the way of the living God today. Then what happens is that we think, well, I do believe in a loving universe that's friendly and supportive because God is all things, and that means me, and that means that no matter what's going on, because God is all things, there's solutions someplace, and I may not have the most brilliant idea, but maybe something out there will spark an inspiration, and then the next thing I know is, as I'm moving forward, I do believe life happens through me. Life doesn't happen to me, it happens for me. So there's our belief system right there, we're set up. Then we get to our body. Now here is where we start discovering the act of generosity in being the way of God. The way of God is expansive, which means generosity, which means doing our best, which means doing our best is about going above and beyond what's required. We do the hard things. Okay, like I did. I went on sugar and flour again. And it's hard. And I'm not feeling any difference yet. Although I accidentally dried these jeans and they were really easy to get on today, so. Or before I would not have worn them. But I have some conflict, but I still can move back into my centered self because right now we have ice cream in the freezer. I'm not even an ice cream eater, but right now I'm just mad that it's in there. But see, when we're generous with our bodies, we do the right thing for our body, even if it's kind of hard for us. Somebody who gets up at 4:30 a.m. to go work out, they're being generous with their body. It's not an easy thing to get up at 4:30 or 5. or 5:30 or 6. We get there though. How are we generous with our bodies? Yeah. Are we deciding, okay, I'm going to go outside and get some actual sun on my head even though it's cold. Maybe I'll do a really cold shower to invigorate myself. This may be all stuff that's not comfortable, but it's good for our bodies, so we're being generous with our bodies. Okay, remember, there's no neutral zone, and this is really where it shows up. We cannot do the bare minimum for our bodies and thrive. Absolutely, you cannot thrive. Nobody can thrive doing the bare minimum. We can have some recovery, like if we spend a weekend in bed. You know, if you're really, really young, like you can push it a little farther. But doing the bare minimum for our bodies, we're not in thriving mode, we're in restriction mode. Life will be lesser and lesser if we're not doing our very best for our bodies. Okay, so then we're loving our bodies, we're being generous with our bodies because we are the way of God in this world. And then that goes out to other people now. Now that's next, other people. Well, if we're the way of God in this world, we recognize the truth of God in other people, right? Even in the people we don't like. You know, and it's okay. We don't have to like everybody. That's totally okay. We just want to recognize the truth of God in them. That's all. We don't have to, invite them over to our house. We just recognize the truth of God in them. And also accept the fact that even though we might be tempted to be judgy and say, you're not being the way of God right now with that behavior. But we don't know the divine plan at work in them. Maybe them not being in the way of God right now, maybe them being in their own way, maybe it's not about them. Like sometimes people serve as horrible warnings, like that we can benefit from. Okay, so we accept that we don't know God's timeline in them or how God is at work in them. And because we are the way of the living God in this world, then we just approach everybody with an open mind and kindness, right? And some understanding. And then that goes out into everything else. How we're showing up at our jobs, our careers, our hobbies, like how we're of service. We're going above and beyond. Like doing our very best, right? Saying no to the behaviors that keep us from showing up. Saying no to those behaviors that keep us from connecting with our life and participating with our life. See, this one thing, like just knowing this one thing. Oh, that's my affirmation. Okay, well, we're not quite there yet, but this one thing that we are, our purpose is to be the way of God in this world. It becomes a guiding light for us that always guides us as to the next right thing to do. So that's what it's doing for us. Remember, here in Unity, it's not easy, but we like to take ownership because there's nobody out in the world who can make us experience peace. There's nobody out in the world that can make us experience our truth and our wholeness, right? The truth that we are also the emanation of God in this world. We're the physical activity of God in this world. We're not going to recognize that if we're in the way of God. So we take responsibility, like what's the next thing that I'm going to do? We make the next choice. We pay attention. Am I in the way or am I the way? Right? So here is our call to action this week. Of course, you already see the affirmation. This is one of my favorite affirmations I've ever done. I am the light and the way of God. Let's say that together. I am the light and the way of God. Your spiritual job description, right? My spiritual, all of us, we have the same spiritual job description. And that's to be the way of God in this world. To be the way the living God moves into the package of our life. That's our job description. And it's what we are designed for. We're designed to do that. When things do what they're designed to do, things work well, don't they? Things work very smooth. And we are designed to be the way of God. That's why it's not smooth. It doesn't feel good when we are in the way of God. That's why we call it conflict. Right? Because it's not working out so good. It's bumpy. It's like roller skates are meant to be used on pavement. Hopefully pavement that doesn't have a bunch of rocks on it, right? Or smooth sidewalk. Would you wear your roller skates on the beach into the sand? Like, that wouldn't work out very well. And probably wreck the skates. I bet it would wreck the skates. That's what happens when we use something for something it's not designed to do. When we decide we want to stay mad, which it can be easy to do that. Like, sometimes I've known this about myself. I'm like, I'm mad and I know I'm wrong, but I want to be right, and damn it, I want to prove to that person I'm right, and I want them to know. I want them to know how much they messed up. Like, because they're in the way and it's making my day sad. Sometimes it's just not easy to let that go. It's why this is a practice. It's a practice. We do it all the time. We have to be the one that chooses our consciousness for the day. We're the one that has to choose a new consciousness. If we move into conflict, we have to pay attention when we move into conflict. We already know that we're in conflict because it doesn't feel good. So we already know that we're in conflict. But it's only us. We're the only one who can do anything about being in the conflict. Because if we're mad at something out there that didn't work out, and say it changes. And so, like, for a minute we're happy. But you know what? Everything out here changes. And everything out there is not going to keep lining up to make us happy. So we're the ones who have to look here. We're the ones who have to think here. Okay, was I in conflict? Yes. Am I going to make the choice about it, or do I want to stew in it for a little while? Conflict shows up to show us we're in our own way. Conflict shows up to show us that we are in the way of the living God working through us. We are in the way of that divine inspiration, and we are in the way of creative expression that's seeking to create something through us. We are in the way of that guidance that would tell us the next right thing to do. And you know what? You never know when that next right thing to do that you're being guided, and you can only hear it if you decide to get out of the way and be the way of God in this world. That next right thing to do, it might be the thing that changes your life. It might be the thing, that small thing. Like, I think of all the great things that happened in my life, and they didn't happen with just a great thing all of a sudden happened. It happened with a tiny thing a long time ago. But if we're in our own way, we're not going to hear the next right thing to do, and we're prolonging when that goodness shows up in our life. I had a lot of conflict in my heart last week. I had a rough week. I just did. And so one morning, like I have this kind of morning routine, and I write out prayers and stuff. And so one morning I wrote this: today I will recognize conflict whenever it enters my heart. It is not an unwelcome guest, because it holds the key to my peace. If I would just look at it, if I would just recognize it, and accept the gift that it is handing me. That's what conflict does for us. We don't have to ever try to be free of conflict. That's not the game, to be free of conflict. The game is to recognize that we go into it and do something about it. That's the game. We recognize when we go into conflict, we say that in our head, oh, I'm in conflict, this is me again. I did that again. And then, like, for myself, I'll go through the God is all things and that means me. Like, I'll do that. Like, I'll go through that. But when we recognize that, then again, we can become the avenue for God in this world. Again, we become the avenue for good. Again, we become the way of the living God in our own life. This is how we know God in our lives. This is how we know God. A long time ago, there was this, I want to say book, but it's not actually a book, I don't think. I mean, I think it's a book now, but it's called The Emerald Tablets, written by Hermes Trismegistus. And this is where as above, so below comes from, I believe. Right? As above, so below. As above, that's us as a spiritual being, our soul. So below, it's us in our human body having this experience right now. I spent so many years trying to be just like my soul again. I spent so many years trying to get back there into heaven, in this realm of heaven, going up in meditation, like wanting to be there, wanting to be ultra spiritual, wanting to be ultra enlightened again. But our soul is already is so enlightened. The soul doesn't come here for more of the same. The soul comes here to gain new experiences. The soul comes here to play a game. All of this is a game to our souls. We are here to know God. We are here to know God in this experience. We're here to face the conflict and do something about it. And then we face the conflict, and then we do something about it. We get a new experience every single time. Pretty soon, conflict is showing up in our lives in funny places. And we're like, okay, thank you. I didn't know that was there. I thought I was good to go, but I guess I'm not. There's another piece. So conflict is showing up to teach us, to recognize, okay, I wasn't calling for the divine. I wasn't being the way of God, the way of the living God. Conflict shows up as a friend. And we do something about it. We choose again, and this is how we are creating heaven on earth. So, until next time, remember, you're divinely designed to do all this stuff. You are the physical activity of God in this world. You are the way of the living God in this world and out into the package of your life. And everything you do, you are blessed, and so it is.
So it is. Amen.
All right. And we do have a